100 U.S. Navy SEALs versus one-woman snipers. Can they handle her 3,000-meter shot? A single shot echoed across Red Valley Range. So distant, it sounded more like thunder than gunfire. The spotter froze, staring through his scope. Target hit. Dead center. 3,000 meters. No one spoke. 100 Navy SEALs stood stunned, watching a lone woman lower her rifle in the heat shimmer. The Nevada sun burned white over the Red Valley Range, an unmarked stretch of desert reserved for America's most elite warriors. 100 Navy SEALs, men forged in war, men who'd bled on foreign sand and stood in tight formation. Their uniforms were soaked in sweat, their eyes sharp, expectant. Commander Jack Reynolds, silver hair tucked beneath his cap, stepped forward with a clipboard. His voice carried the kind of authority that silences air. "Gentlemen, today's exercise is not routine." He paused. The wind kicked dust across their boots. "This range is about precision under impossible conditions. But today, you won't be facing a rival team." A low murmur rippled through the ranks. Petty Officer Mike Calloway, built like an oak tree and twice as stubborn, shifted his jaw. "Then who are we competing against, sir?" Reynolds let the silence stretch before turning his eyes toward the horizon. "Not who," he said, "but her." From the far end of the valley, a single black SUV approached, its tires leaving a slow trail of dust. When the doors opened, a woman stepped out, tall, lean, wearing Army combat fatigues. A case slung over her shoulder, movements measured, deliberate. "Meet Captain Sarah Drake," Reynolds announced. "Army Sniper Special Recon Division." A few SEALs exchanged smirks. One muttered, "She better have brought a miracle." Drake didn't flinch. Her gaze swept the group, calm, steady, unreadable. Then she said, "I'm not here to compete. I'm here to test your limits." A quiet fell over the formation. Reynolds turned toward the men. "The objective is simple. She'll attempt a confirmed shot at 3,000 meters. You'll each do the same. Closest grouping wins. That's all." Calloway stepped forward. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Granted. With all due respect, no one alive can hit that clean. Not consistently." Drake unsnapped her case and drew out a matte black rifle, Chaytak M300 Intervention. It gleamed under the desert sun like something sacred. She looked up. "Then watch closely, Petty Officer. Maybe you'll see why some of us don't believe in limits." The range stretched beyond comprehension, a mirage of heat and dust, distant targets shimmering in the haze. Most shooters never attempted beyond 2,000 meters. Beyond that, wind became chaos, the earth itself a variable. Drake lay prone on the coarse ground, elbows dug into the sand. Every movement was ritual. Her spotter, Sergeant Elena Cruz, crouched beside her. Quiet. Calculating. Wind 3.2 left. Gusting 4 at pond 200. Cruz murmured. Copy. Elevation +7. The Chaytak's barrel aligned with the farthest steel silhouette, a white human form smaller than a thumbnail. A few SEALs watched through binoculars, smirking. Miller, the youngest, whispered, "No way she even tags the plate." Reynolds said nothing. He'd seen her name before, buried deep in classified after-action reports. Drake's breathing slowed. Her finger brushed the trigger. The world seemed to contract around her. Then, crack, the shot vanished into the desert void. Seconds stretched. Then the steel plate sang. A perfect center hit. Silence. Then disbelief. Holy. "She actually hit it," Miller muttered. "Range confirmed?" Reynolds asked. 3,000 meters, the range officer said, voice trembling. "Dead center." Drake calmly lifted her head, eyes unreadable. "That's my baseline," she said. "Your turn." The SEALs began setting up, jaws tight. Pride wasn't just on the line, identity was. Calloway went first, adjusting his MK-13 Mod 7, confident but unsettled. "Range 3,000. Wind steady. Fire when ready," he squeezed. The rifle thundered. Through the scope, nothing. Miss. Not even a glancing blow. "Impact unconfirmed," Cruz reported softly. Calloway reloaded, Frustration visible. Second shot, miss. Third, wide right. A murmur spread among the SEALs. Miller's palms were slick. "That's impossible," he whispered. Reynolds glanced at Drake. She said nothing, just cleaned her barrel, movements methodical. For her, this wasn't arrogance. It was precision born from something deeper, something that once cost her everything. When the shooting paused for rehydration, Reynolds approached her. "Captain Drake, that shot and you've done it before." Her eyes flickered. Once he waited. The silence between them was heavy, filled with memory. "It was Kandahar," she said quietly. "Convoy ambushed in 2017. Our forward unit pinned. My partner was hit. Wind shear kept changing, couldn't get a clean line. I had one chance before they reached the survivors." Her voice trembled, barely perceptible. "I made that shot from 3,042 meters. One full cross. Took me 8 seconds to hear impact," Reynolds exhaled. "You were the unknown sniper from the Kandahar extraction." Drake said nothing. She just looked past him toward the horizon where heat distorted the sky. Calloway and the others were silent now, respect replacing bravado. Yet under it, something else. Shame. Drake stood. "You want to know what makes the difference between a miss and a miracle?" She tapped her chest. "It's not this," she said, holding up the rifle. "It's what you carry right here." Cruz looked down. She'd heard the story before, but never told out loud. The shot that saved 6 lives but cost Drake her husband, also a sniper, who bled out before medevac could reach him. Drake walked to the firing line again. Wind shifted. Distance increased by 0.2. "I'll demonstrate compensation." She didn't shoot immediately. She just watched the air, the shimmer, the unseen dance of pressure and motion, the kind of observation that takes years of silence to learn. Then, another crack. The bullet struck dead center again. "Confirmed." "Hit!" came the voice from the tower. "Repeat," confirmed. The SEALs were silent. It wasn't just accuracy. It was control born from loss. When Drake rose, the world seemed to tilt around her, dust swirling in sunlight like ghosts of every battle she'd survived. She didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just chambered around, checked her data book, and set the rifle down. Reynolds called out, "Men, reset targets. Let's see who else can get close." The SEALs lined up one by one, their faces stripped of bravado. Each man took his turn, recalculating, testing, sweating under the unrelenting sun. One after another, they missed. Some close. Most not. Miller hit the outer plate once. It echoed hollowly across the desert. He exhaled, hands trembling. Drake stepped beside him, voice low. "Don't rush your breath. The bullet listens to your heartbeat." He nodded, surprised at her tone, patient, teacherly. His next shot came closer. Not perfect, but better. Reynolds watched her from the command post. He'd seen legends, but none like this. A soldier who carried grief like a weapon and turned pain into precision. When the final report came through, not a single SEAL had matched her grouping. Commander Reynolds gathered the team. "Gentlemen, we measure strength and muscle and endurance, but sometimes power looks like quiet conviction. Captain Drake reminded us of that today." Calloway stepped forward, removing his cap. "Ma'am," he said, extending a hand. "That was the finest shooting I've ever seen." Drake shook it gently. "It's not about fine shooting, petty officer. It's about never letting what broke you keep you from aiming again." As the sun dipped behind the ridgeline, her shadow stretched long across the sand, the mark of someone who'd spent her whole life chasing redemption in every bullet she fired. By noon, the Nevada heat shimmered like liquid glass. The temperature on the range read 118 degrees, but the air felt hotter, thick with pride, doubt, and the scent of gunpowder. Commander Reynolds called the team together under the shade of the command canopy. "We'll run Phase 2, he said. "Variable targets. Moving silhouettes. Wind shift every 5 minutes. Captain Drake will lead the calibration." Miller wiped sweat from his brow. "Sir, you mean she's leading us?" Reynolds nodded. "Consider it a joint operation. You'll follow her commands. The SEALs exchanged looks. Men who'd led raids in enemy territory, now ordered to take instruction from someone they couldn't yet understand. Drake walked forward, expression calm but eyes sharp. This isn't about gender. It's about gravity, wind, and humility. Those don't care who you are. She knelt and started marking the sand with her finger, rough sketches of wind vectors and ricochet zones. You've got crosswinds from two valleys converging here. Treat it like a whisper. Listen, don't fight it. Calloway crouched beside her. For the first time his voice was steady, curious. You read it by the mirage? She nodded. And by what it isn't doing. Silence tells you more than noise. The test began. Targets moved unpredictably, distances changing through digital control. SEALs took turns, adjusting, firing, recalculating. Miss, hit, miss. Then Drake took position again. Cruz called out readings, her voice soft but unwavering. Wind 2.8. Drop -7.1, the shot rang. Another perfect impact. Calloway whistled under his breath. That's inhuman. Reynolds leaned closer, speaking low enough only Cruz heard. Where'd she train for that? Cruz's answer was almost reverent. Nowhere, sir. She trained after she lost him. Reynolds frowned. Her husband? Cruz nodded. Killed during Kandahar, the man who taught her how to read the wind. By late afternoon the sky burned gold. Long shadows stretched across the range. The SEALs' pride had turned to quiet respect. They no longer whispered or smirked. Every man watched her as though studying a secret they'd never been taught. Drake sat apart from the others during meal break, helmet resting beside her, fingers tracing a worn photograph tucked inside her rifle case. A man in uniform, smiling beneath Afghan sun. Cruz approached, sitting beside her in silence. He'd be proud, she murmured. Drake's jaw tightened. He'd tell me to stop chasing ghosts. Reynolds joined them, kneeling on the dry earth. You know, the men used to laugh at Hathcock too, he said softly. Until they realized his silence was deadlier than any noise. Drake met his gaze. Silence is the only thing that listens back. The commander nodded slowly. Tomorrow's test isn't about precision. It's about endurance. You'll be firing through simulated combat. Smoke, flashbangs, artificial wind bursts. Think you're up for that? Drake stood, dusting off her hands. Sir, I've been firing through chaos my whole life. Behind them, Miller and Calloway exchanged glances. Calloway muttered, She's something else. Miller smiled faintly. Yeah, something they don't make twice. That night, as the desert cooled and stars spread across the endless black, the camp fell silent. Only one light stayed on. Drake's. She sat cleaning her rifle with ritual care, whispering words no one could hear. The next morning, artificial weather generators roared to life. Massive turbines lined the valley, creating shifting currents of dust and wind. Visibility dropped to near zero. It felt like a sandstorm, blinding, hostile. Reynolds briefed them through the headset. Targets moving at 2,500, 2,200, and 3,000 meters. 15-second visibility windows. Live rounds. Safety off. Drake adjusted her scope, eyes narrowed behind ballistic goggles. Wind 12 knots, full cross. Adjust +10. Cruz crouched behind her, voice steady despite the chaos. 3, 2. On, window open, Drake fired. The bullet vanished in the storm. A second later, ping. Center hit confirmed, Cruz said. The SEALs followed suit, struggling to adapt. Bullets veered wide, lost in the wind. Miller cursed under his breath, barely able to see his own hands. Drake crawled across the ground, checking their positions. Lower your profile. You're catching drag. Stay fluid, don't fight the air. Calloway nodded, doing as told. His next round clipped the edge of the plate. He laughed under his breath. Getting closer. When the storm eased, Reynolds called ceasefire. The digital board lit up. Drake, 98% accuracy. Team total, 47%. Even the range tech stood silent. Reynolds removed his headset. That's unprecedented. Drake's voice came quiet through the comm. War doesn't give you clear skies, sir. You learn to shoot through the storm or you don't shoot at all. Her words sank deep, not just into the men, but into every listener who'd ever fought invisible battles of their own. The day ended with inspection, but the quiet didn't last. As the teams packed up, Reynolds received a secure call. His expression shifted. Captain Drake, Sergeant Cruz, inside the command tent, now. Inside, the air was tense. Satellite just picked up unauthorized drone footage, Reynolds said. Your performance went viral on a private network, leaked from within this base. Drake froze. Sir, that data was classified. I know, and someone here shared it. The SEALs outside caught fragments of raised voices. Miller leaned toward Calloway. Think it's about her shot? Calloway frowned. If it is, someone's in deep trouble. Drake's eyes darkened. Sir, if that footage circulates, my family's safety is compromised. I've been off-grid since Kandahar for a reason. Reynolds nodded. We'll find the leak. But even as he spoke, a low hum filled the air, the unmistakable whine of a small UAV overhead. Everyone rushed out, scanning the darkening sky. A glint. A flash, then, boom. A small explosion rocked the far end of the range. Smoke rose where the observation post had stood moments before. Everyone down, Reynolds barked. Through the haze, Drake grabbed her rifle and scanned the ridgeline. That wasn't random, she said coldly. Someone just tried to erase evidence. Cruz knelt beside her, loading a mag. Orders? Drake's tone was calm, razor sharp. We find the shooter. Reynolds looked at her, startled by how naturally command fit her voice. She wasn't just a sniper now. She was something older, forged from loss, duty, and ghosts that refused to die. The blast still echoed through the valley when the SEALs scrambled into defensive formation. Smoke rolled across the sand. Reynolds shouted over the comms, all teams, check sectors. Possible hostile UAV strike. Drake dropped to one knee, adjusting her optics. Cruz bearing 185, elevation -12. I saw a flash there. Cruz focused her spotting scope. Confirmed. Heat signature 2,900 meters, static position. Reynolds hesitated. That's outside range, Drake shook her head. Not for me. She crawled into prone position, calm amid chaos. Her fingers moved like memory, scope dialed, wind tested with a puff of sand. Wind 7.2 east. Drop -6, Cruz breathed. You can't see him through the smoke. Drake replied quietly. You don't need to see ghosts. You just need to know where they breathe. Reynolds watched as she lined up the shot. The air went still, time folding around her like glass. Then, crack. For a full 3 seconds, nothing. Then, impact. A figure tumbled from the ridge. Silence. Cruz lowered her scope. Hit confirmed. 2,142 meters. Single shot. The SEALs erupted, disbelief mixing with awe. Calloway murmured. That's impossible. Drake didn't answer. She just lay there, face hidden, breathing uneven. Cruz reached over, touched her shoulder gently. Reynolds approached, voice low. You saved lives again, Captain, Drake whispered. I didn't want to. I just couldn't lose another one. She rolled onto her back, staring at the burning sky. For a moment she wasn't a soldier, just a widow still fighting the same war. Dusk descended over Red Valley, the light dimming to amber. A medevac drone buzzed overhead, scanning for debris. The air smelled of ozone and dust. The SEALs sat in silence, rifles slung, adrenaline slowly fading. Reynolds paced, radio pressed to his ear. No external signatures detected. Whoever launched that drone knew our protocols. Calloway exhaled. So this was planned? Reynolds nodded grimly. Someone wanted to test her, not us. Drake cleaned her rifle with methodical calm. Every stroke of the rag seemed like penance. Cruz sat nearby, wrapping a small cut on her arm. You knew they'd find you eventually, Cruz said softly. Drake's eyes stayed on her weapon. You can't disappear forever. Not when you've done something the world can't explain. Miller, hesitant but sincere, approached. Ma'am, when you fired that shot, you didn't even blink. How do you do that? Drake smiled faintly. You stop thinking about what you might lose. You focus on what you refuse to let go. Reynolds called out. Men, tomorrow 0500, we resume qualification. This test isn't over. The SEALs stared at him, confused. He continued, "We don't end on fear, we end on mastery." Later, as night settled over the camp, Drake sat alone by the observation tower. The desert wind whispered through the wires. She took out her husband's dog tags, the edges worn smooth. She whispered, "You'd laugh at me right now, wouldn't you? Out shooting SEALs and still feeling like I failed." A faint rustle behind her, Calloway. He spoke quietly. "You didn't fail anyone, ma'am. You just showed us what it means to aim when it matters most." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "Then learn from it, petty officer. Learn before it costs you what it cost me." At dawn, the range glowed gold again. Dust hung low, sunlight cutting through like fire over glass. The final qualification was ready. Every SEAL against the clock and then against themselves. Drake stood apart, watching. Reynolds handed her a headset. "You'll be range control today." She nodded. "Understood." As the test began, she called corrections, her voice steady through comms. "Wind 5 left, breathe, let the reticle settle. Don't fight it." Each shot cracked like thunder. One by one, the men began landing hits they'd missed before. Miller's grouping tightened. Calloway, calm and focused, landed a perfect center strike at 2,700. Cheers erupted through the comms. "That's it, sir." "Dead center!" Drake smiled faintly. You listened to the silence, then Reynolds stepped forward. "Captain, your turn." 3,000 meters again, final shot. Drake blinked. "Sir? You end what you started." She hesitated. For the first time, her hands trembled. Not from doubt, but from memory. Cruz whispered, "Do it for him." Drake lay down. The range stretched endlessly, shimmering like a memory refusing to fade. She aligned her scope, but this time she didn't calculate. She simply breathed. In her mind, she heard his voice, soft, steady. "Wind 3 left." "You've got it, Sarah." Crack the shot sang across the valley, ping. "Perfect hit," Reynolds whispered. 3,000 meters confirmed. Drake exhaled, lowering the rifle. A tear rolled across her cheek and fell into the sand. "Finally," she said softly, "he can rest." A week later, at a classified ceremony held far from cameras and headlines, the SEALs stood at attention as Drake walked forward in her dress uniform. Her hair was tied back, her posture straight, but her eyes carried the weight of every mile, every loss. Commander Reynolds spoke from the podium. "In honor of extraordinary precision, valor under fire, and the humility that defines true mastery, Captain Sarah Drake is hereby commended by the United States Navy Special Warfare Command." Applause broke the silence. Calloway was first to clap, then Miller, then the entire formation. Drake accepted the medal, a simple bronze clasp with no nameplate. She turned it over in her hand, almost smiling. "Sir," she said softly to Reynolds, "may I request it be sent to a different name?" He raised an eyebrow. "Who?" She looked toward the horizon. "Staff Sergeant Mark Drake. He taught me everything worth knowing." Reynolds nodded, voice rough. "Consider it done." Outside, the wind carried the sound of distant gunfire from another training range. Echoes of warriors learning to aim truer, breathe slower, feel deeper. Drake paused at the gate before leaving. Miller jogged up behind her. "Ma'am, can I ask something?" "Go ahead," he hesitated. "That 3,000-meter shot. Was it luck?" She smiled, eyes soft. "Luck runs out. Purpose doesn't." Then she turned toward the open desert, the horizon stretching endless and silent. 2 months later, Sarah Drake lived quietly in a remote cabin overlooking the same desert where she'd made history. The rifle sat above the mantel, cleaned, oiled, untouched. Morning sunlight filtered through the blinds as she poured black coffee into a tin mug. On the table beside her lay a faded envelope, one she had written but never mailed. The handwriting was steady, the name smudged. Mark Drake and Forward Operating Base Lionsgate. She unfolded the letter, reading the words she had memorized long ago. You told me once that a sniper's heart is their real weapon, not the rifle. I didn't understand then, I do now. Every breath, every trigger pull, it's all a choice. I still hear your laugh in the wind when I line up a shot. You'd be proud, Mark. I finally hit one that mattered. Her eyes lingered on the page. A quiet knock at the door broke her trance. Reynolds stood outside, cap in hand. Heard you built yourself a firing range out here, he said with a grin. Drake smiled faintly. Old habits die hard. He stepped inside, handing her a sealed box. This came through command channels. Classified archives, your name attached. She opened it. Inside, the bronze medal she had given up. But now, engraved beneath Mark Drake were 3 words. For her aim. For a long time she said nothing. Just stared at the words, and the weight they carried. Back at Red Valley Range, recruits whispered stories about her. The woman who outshot 100 SEALs and disappeared into the desert. Her legend became part of training doctrine. Reynolds would still quote her during orientation. Precision isn't perfection. It's forgiveness at 3,000 meters. Cruz stayed on as a lead instructor. When recruits missed their first long-range shot, she'd smile softly and say, "She missed 1,000 before that one. You just didn't see it." In the control tower, a small plaque hung beside the wind gauge. Capped Sarah Drake. 1 shot, 1 truth. Years later, one of the young SEALs, Miller, made his own impossible hit during an overseas mission. When asked how he did it, he said only, "She taught me to listen to silence." And somewhere beneath the same burning sky, Sarah watched the horizon through her scope. Calm, grounded, eternal. A storm rolled through the valley one night, fierce, electric, alive. Thunder cracked against the mountains like distant gunfire. Drake stood outside her cabin, rain running down her uniform sleeves. She aimed the old rifle into the storm, sighting on nothing but lightning and memory. She whispered, "For every soul I couldn't save, may this shot reach you." She squeezed the trigger. The sound vanished into the roar of rain. A final echo carried across 3,000 meters of desert and silence. In that moment, she wasn't the sniper, the widow, the legend. She was just Sarah, one soldier finding peace in the storm. They called her the woman who could outshoot the impossible. But what made her legendary wasn't the 3,000-meter hit. It was the reason behind it. A heart steady enough to face loss, and still choose purpose. A shot so far it rewrote the range of belief, and a silence so deep, the world still listens. Captain Sarah Drake, the sniper who didn't aim for glory. She aimed for redemption.